Hi Bookish Besties, my name is Brittany. This is Rescues and Reads. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you are new, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're already subscribed, as always, I appreciate your continued support. Thank you for returning to another video. Today it is time to do my December Book of the Month predictions. Now, before we jump into the video, I don't know if you're going to be able to see him, but we are joined with Sir Archibald. I left this chair for all of 5 seconds, and he came in and he decided it was his chair now, and I didn't have the heart to move him. I told him if he was a good boy, he would be allowed to stay, but I may have to get up in the middle of filming this video and boot him out. So we'll see, but for now, he's just kind of chilling right next to me, being a good boy. Now, December, I feel, is going to be another weird month. December is another slow publishing month, and truly, my predictions are that Book of the Month is going to do whatever the heck it wants. I have a feeling that Book of the Month is going to take some later releases from November, some early releases from January, and possibly even some older releases from earlier in the year and make them their main selections or their add-on selections. I do not necessarily know how many books actually published in December they are going to feature, but these predictions, as always, are just my best guesses as to what books could potentially be on Book of the Month's radar. As a reminder, all of my predictions are divided up into 5 distinct genre categories. I can have as many books per category as I want, as long as total they don't go over 20 predictions. As always, we are going to start this video with the mystery, thriller, horror category. And the very first prediction that I have is the newest release from Darby Kane called What the Wife Knew. Now, if I remember correctly, Darby Kane has actually been featured twice on Book of the Month, both of which, oddly enough, the title also contained wife. So she just likes to put out books with the word wife in the title. But I don't believe that her last release was featured on Book of the Month, which makes me feel it is less likely that this one will be featured. But as I've mentioned in the past, just because Book of the Month might skip a release from an author does not necessarily mean they will never feature that author again. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and include Darby Kane here. So this one says, Dr. Richmond Doherty is a renowned pediatric surgeon, an infamous tragedy survivor, and a national hero. He's also very dead, thanks to a fall down the stairs. His neighbors angrily point a finger at the newest Mrs. Doherty, Addison. The sudden marriage to the mysterious young woman only lasted 97 days, and he'd had 2 suspicious accidents during that time. Now, Addison is a very rich widow. As law enforcement starts to circle in on Addison and people in the town become increasingly hostile, sides are chosen with Catherine, Richmond's high school sweetheart, wife number 1, and the mother of his children, leading the fray. Despite rising tensions, Addison is even more driven to forge ahead on the path she charted years ago. Determined at all costs to unravel Richmond's legacy, she soon becomes a target with a shocking note left on her bedroom wall. You will pay. But it will take a lot more than faceless threats to stop Addison. Her plan to marry Richmond, then ruin him, may have been derailed by his unexpected death, but she's not done with him yet. I just love the sound of that. Darby Kane just writes these really complex, morally gray female characters, but you also root for them at the same time. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen here, because it's obvious that Addison had ulterior motives with marrying Richmond, but her plans were derailed when he died. So it sounds like she wasn't the cause of his death, but she's determined to find out who caused his death. So I don't know, I'm very intrigued by that. So I think I will definitely pick this one up if it is featured on Book of the Month in the month of December. My next prediction is the newest release from Jane Peck called The Rivals. Now, this is the second book in the Claudia Lynn, I believe it's only a duology, and the first book called The Verifiers was previously featured on Book of the Month. I honestly do not want to read the synopsis of this one just in case it does potentially spoil anything from the first book, but it is, to my knowledge, going to follow that same character. So if you read The Verifiers, if you really enjoyed it, this is definitely one that you want to keep your eye out for on Book of the Month in the month of December. And my next prediction is a book called Deadbeat by Adam Hamdy. It says, Peyton Collard was a good man once, but his life changed after a horrific car accident. Divorced, drunk, and severely damaged, Peyton is offered a life-changing sum of money to kill an evil man. But as he goes on a vigilante journey that leaves a trail of bodies across California, Peyton wonders about the identity of his anonymous patron. Soon his questions become an obsession, and he embarks on a tense and potentially deadly investigation to discover the truth about the murders he's committed. So this definitely sounds like it's going to be a very dark, gritty type of thriller. It sounds a little bit along the lines of kind of like Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, and it sounds like the main character in this is being paid to take out a man he's been told is evil, but as he kind of goes on this journey and as he has a lot of murders behind him, he's starting to wonder what the actual motives are, who the actual patron is, and it starts to be more about his investigation into that. And I'm really intrigued. I've never read anything by this author. I don't think this author has been featured on Book of the Month, so I don't know how likely this book is going to be featured. But like I said, it's on the darker, grittier side, and Book of the Month has featured books like that in the past. So I'm very intrigued by this. This is one that I would be excited to see featured on Book of the Month, and I think that I would pick it up if it were featured. The final prediction that I have for this category is a book called Havoc by Christopher Bolin. This says, 81-year-old widow Maggie Burkhart came to the Royal Karnak to escape, but not in quite the same way as most other guests who are relaxing in this threadbare luxury hotel on the banks of of the Nile. Maggie, a compulsive fixer of other people's lives, may have found herself in hot water at her last hotel in Switzerland and just might have needed to get out of there fast. But here at the Royal Karnak, under the hot Saharan sun, she has a comfortable suite, a loyal confidant in the hotel manager, Ahmed, and a handful of sympathetic friends, similar long-termers who understand her still vivid grief from her late husband, Peter. Here she is merely the sweet old lady in room 309. One morning, however, Maggie notices a new arrival at check-in, a mournful-looking young mother named Tess and her impish 8-year-old Otto. Eager to help, Maggie invites them into her world, but it isn't long before Maggie realizes that in her longing to be a part of their family, she has let in an enemy much stronger than she bargained for. In scrawny, homely Otto, Maggie Burkhart has finally met her match. Alright, now I definitely know that this is not one that is going to be up my alley just because I do not like books that feature creepy kids, so we're going to have to see what my decision is should Book of the Month feature it. I don't know, I do not love the creepy kid dynamic, but I know a lot of people do, so this is not one that I would be surprised to see featured on Book of the Month. Alright, moving on into the category of romance, I have two to talk with you about today. The first is a book called Not in My Book by Katie Holt. Now the reason why I selected this for the romance category is because after I read the synopsis to you, you're going to see that this sounds very similar to Beach Read by Emily Henry. And so since Emily Henry used to be a featured author on Book of the Month, and since this is a plotline that I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy, I feel like this is a strong possibility for the romance category. This says, Rosie, an idealistic and passionate Peruvian American, leaves her Tennessee hometown to pursue her dream of making it in New York as a writer. But her plan is derailed when she ends up in class with her arch nemesis and ex-crush, Aiden Huntington, an obnoxious, surly, and gorgeous literary fiction writer who doesn't have much patience for the romance genre, or for Rosie. Rosie and Aiden regularly go to verbal battle and workshop until their professor reaches her breaking point. She allows them to stay in her class on one condition: they must co-write a novel that blends their genres. The reluctant writing duo can't help but put pieces of themselves into their accidentally steamy novel, and their manuscript in progress provides an outlet for them to confess their feelings and explore their attraction to one another. When Rosie and Aiden find themselves competing against each other for a potentially career-changing opportunity, the flames of old rivalry reignite, and their once-in-a-lifetime love story is once again at risk of being shelved, unless they can find a way to end the book on their own terms. So like I said, very similar to Beach Read, although Katie Holt has definitely put her own twist on this. In this book, the two are going to have to co-write a novel together rather than each one taking a stab at the other's genres. There definitely seems to be like a little rivals to lovers kind of situation here. It sounds like they're also going to end up competing for a life-changing opportunity. So very similar characteristics to Beach Read. This sounds like it's going to be a cute, fun time, but also it could have some harder hitting elements to it. I'm not sure. Okay, so this actually does say that it's The Hating Game meets Beach Read, so I totally missed, and it's from a debut author. So I don't know, I think that this is a very strong contender for the romance category. And then this final one for the romance category is one that actually really caught my eye. It sounds like it's going to be a harder hitting romance, and y'all know how I love those. This is called When We Had Forever by Shaylin Gandhi. This says, 6 months after her husband died in a car crash, Mina Drake is still mired in a haze of grief. Reminders of her years with Michael are everywhere, but beneath her heartache lies an even more painful emotion. It's a guilty suspicion she can hardly admit to anyone, even herself, that her marriage was over long before Michael's accident. They were good together once, she's sure of it, sharing a connection so deep that Mina can't understand how it unraveled. That is, until a chance discovery in her husband's office, and the reappearance of Michael's estranged brother Grayson, a notorious bad boy photographer, awakens her to possible answers. More shocking still is the pull Mina feels to tattooed, scarred Grayson, who's nothing at all like the man she married. But as feelings stir to life again, so do secrets, changing everything she thought she knew about her marriage and about the risks and rewards of loving with no limits. So that actually seems right up my alley. This says it's perfect for fans of enemies to lovers, second chance romance, slow burns, forbidden love, and for fans of Lucy Score, Emily Henry, and Mia Sheridan. So again, Emily Henry is mentioned here. I don't know if they've ever featured Mia Sheridan, but I think they have featured Lucy Score. So this is certainly a top contender. I would actually really love to see this one featured. This certainly has the potential to be a new favorite kind of romance for me, so I'm really excited about this one, and whether or not it is featured on Book of the Month, I think I'm certainly going to add it to my TBR. All right, moving on into the literary/contemporary fiction category, we have a book called Definitely Better Now by Ava Robinson. This says, the very last person anyone should worry about is Emma. Yes, hi, she's an alcoholic, but she's officially been sober for 1 entire year. 52 whole weeks of focusing on nothing but her 9-to-5 office job, group meetings, and avoiding the kind of bad decisions that previously left her awash in shame and regret. It's also been 365 days of not dating, and with her new dating profile, Emma, 26, of New York, is ready to put herself back out there. Except, was dating always this complicated? And did Emma's mother really have to choose now to move in with her new boyfriend? Being assigned to plan her office holiday party feels like icing on the suddenly very overwhelming cake until her estranged father reappears with devastating news. But then there's Ben, the charming IT guy who, despite Emma's awkwardness and shortcomings, seems to maybe actually get her. Sobriety is turning out to be far from the flawless future Emma had once envisioned for herself. But as she allows herself to open up to Ben and confront difficult past relationships, she's beginning to realize that taking things one day at a time might just be the perfectly imperfect path she's meant to be on. Bittersweet and darkly hilarious, Ava Robinson's debut novel about navigating sobriety and complicated family family dynamics as witty, heartbreaking, and profoundly relatable. So we have a few buzzwords here that I think are key for book of the month, right? She is a debut author. This is going to deal with complex family dynamics. It's going to have the harder hitting element of alcoholism. Somebody who's trying to get back on her feet. She's trying to get back out in the dating world. It sounds like there's going to be some dark humor in this book as well. And this is certainly one that I think could be on book of the month's radar. All right, next we have a book called Rental House by Waiki Wang. Now her previous book called Chemistry was featured on book of the month many years ago. I think it was about 7 years ago at this point. So it has been quite a while, but because she is a previously featured author, I do believe her new release would be on book of the month's radar. This says, Karu and Nate are college sweethearts who marry despite their family differences. Karu's strict Chinese immigrant parents demand perfection, while Nate's rural, white working class family distrusts his intellectual ambitions and his foreign wife. Some years into their marriage, the couple invites their families on vacation. At a Cape Cod beach house and later at a luxury Catskills bungalow, Karu, Nate, and their giant sheepdog navigate visits from in-laws and unexpected guests, all while wondering if they have what it takes to answer the big questions. How do you cope when your spouse and your family of origin clash? How many people and dogs make a family? And when the pack starts to disintegrate, what can you do to shepherd everyone back together? This says, with her wry, wise, and simply spectacular style, Waiki Wang offers a portrait of family that is equally witty, incisive, and tender. So again, we have some of those key words: complicated family dynamics. We have an interracial marriage, and that's going to be discussed because the families don't necessarily get along. There's definitely a culture clash here. And then one day they're all going to go on vacation together, and I think some things are going to come out. Maybe they are going to work some things out. I'm not sure. But this sounds, of course, like it's going to deal with those complicated family dynamics that I really enjoy learning about. And so this is definitely on my radar. I didn't read Waiki Wang's other release, but I'm definitely interested in this one. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Am I taking up my chair? How rude of me. He's kicking me with his feet right now. All right, and the final book that I have for this category is actually a debut novel called What It's Like in Words by Eliza Moss. Enola is approaching 30 and everything feels like a lot. The boxes aren't ticked and she feels adrift in a way she thought she would have beaten by now. She wants to be a writer but can't finish a first draft. She romanticizes her childhood but won't speak to her mother. She has never been in a serious relationship but yearns to be one half of a couple that DIYs together on the weekends. Enter enigmatic writer. Enola falls in love and starts to dream about their perfect future. The wedding, the publishing deal, the house in Stoke Newington. But the reality is far from perfect. He's distant, but she's a cool girl. She doesn't need to hear from him every day. He hangs out with his ex, but she's a cool girl. She's not insecure. He has dark moods, but he's a creative. That's part of his process. Her best friend begs her to end it, but Enola can't. She's a cool girl. She might feel like she's going crazy at times, but she wants him. She needs him. She would die without him. That's what love is, isn't it? Over the next 24 hours and 2 years, everything that Enola thinks she knows is about to unravel, and she has to think again about how she sees love, family, friendship, and, most importantly, herself. With notes of Fleabag and I May Destroy You, but with the sparseness and emotional accuracy of writers like Ali Smith and Lily King, What It's Like in Words is a close examination of what it means to experience the intense emotional uncertainty of first love. So this is supposed to be a dark, intense, and compelling account of what happens when a young woman falls in love with the wrong kind of man. I think that this is something that Book of the Month is definitely not afraid of exploring. They featured books like My Dark Vanessa in the past, and so I definitely think that this is something that they would consider featuring. So I would not be surprised to see this on Book of the Month in the month of December. All right, moving on into historical fiction. I honestly didn't really feel like there were very many strong contenders for this category, and there was really only one that caught my eye, so I am going to discuss it here, but I don't necessarily think that there will be any historical fictions featured. The book is called Sweet Vidalia by Lisa Sandlin. It's 1964, and Eliza Kratky is mostly content. Married 30 years, she is long settled in Bayard, Texas, with 2 grown children, a nice house, a little dog, and a routine. But her husband has a secret, and Eliza has not been brave enough to demand to know what it is. So when her husband dies suddenly, the ground doesn't just shift under Eliza's feet. It falls away entirely, revealing that she has known nothing true about her life. How should she come to terms with all that has been a lie? What emerges from this wreckage is a profoundly compelling portrait of a wonderfully nuanced woman worn down like a gemstone to a core of durability and self-reliance as she fights for her own path forward. By taking business classes and moving into a hotel filled with aspiring young people, the Sweet Vidalia, Eliza gathers new friends and new possibilities. But with each of these, she finds that it isn't so simple to leave the past behind. Sweet Vidalia not only explores what it means to be honest with ourselves and with one another, but asks, what will we do with the truth when we find it? So this certainly sounds like it's going to be a very character-driven narrative. It follows a woman who's definitely in the middle of her life. She had been married for 30 years. She knew her husband was hiding a secret, and then he suddenly dies and everything kind of unravels around her, and she's forced to start over very late in her life, and she's coming to terms with a lot of things that she never knew. She's having to rebuild everything from scratch. So it certainly sounds, like I said, going to be very, very character-driven, probably very little plot. It sounds like she's going to be learning a lot from the young people who's at this hotel where she's staying, and she's basically essentially just trying to find herself now late in life. Now that her husband is gone, her children are out of the house, they're grown, and she kind of has to figure out who she is and who she wants to be and how she's going to make it going forward. That certainly sounds like something I could be interested in as a character-driven reader. However, I do also have to be interested in the overall context of the story, and I'm not entirely sure this one is quite working for me, but I would be interested to see more people's thoughts and feelings about this one. All right, and then moving on into the very final category of fantasy, sci-fi, and magical realism, I have two that I've seen going around all over the place, and they seem to be getting a lot of buzz, so that's what put them on my radar and why I wanted to mention them here. The first is a book called North is the Night by Emily Rath. In the Finnish wilderness, more than wolves roam the darkness. For Siri and Aina, summer's fading light is a harbinger of unwelcome change. Land-hungry Swedes venture north, threatening the peace. A zealous Christian priest denounces the old ways, and young women have begun to disappear. Siri vows to protect Aina from danger, but even Siri cannot stop a death goddess from dragging her friends to Tuonela, the mythical underworld. Determined to save Aina, Siri braves a dangerous journey north to seek the greatest shaman of legend, the only person to venture to the realm of death and return alive. In Tuonela, the cruel witch queen turns Aina's every waking moment into a living nightmare. But armed with compassion and cleverness, Aina learns the truth of her capture. The king of the underworld himself has plans for her. To return home, Aina must bargain her heart as Siri plots a daring rescue of the woman she loves the most. So the synopsis overall is not really doing it for me, but I think a lot of people would be interested. We've definitely seen an influx of these fantasies that are set in more like Norwegian, Finnish, Swedish kind of settings. That newest one by Danielle L. Jensen is a good example. That was featured on Book of the Month, and so I certainly think that this one could be featured as well. And then this last one that I have here is one that I don't necessarily have high hopes for being featured because it is a Red Tower book, but again, it's one that I've seen going around. It's called The Last One by Rachel Housel Hall, and it is a romantasy. It says, thrown into a desolate land of sickness and unnatural beasts, Kai wakes in the woods with no idea who she is or how she got there. All she knows is that if she cannot reach the Sea of Devour, even this hellscape will get worse. But when she sees the village blacksmith fight invaders with unspeakable skill, she decides to accept his offer of help. Too bad he's as skilled at annoying her as he is at fighting. As she searches for answers, Kai only finds more questions, especially regarding the blacksmith who can ignite her body like a flame, then douse it with ice in the next breath. And no one is just what or who they appear to be in the kingdom of Vinnevrith, including the man whose secrets might be as deadly as the land itself. Again, that synopsis is not doing a whole heck of a lot for me. It sounds very vague. It sounds like a very standard romantasy, but again, I have been seeing it going around. It is a Red Tower publishing book, so it certainly could be a contender for fantasy on Book of the Month. And of course, my battery dies right when I'm getting to the end of the video, so I'm sorry if there is a shift in angle. But anyway, y'all, that is it. Those are all the books that I think could be featured on Book of the Month in the month of December, either as add-ons or as part of their monthly curated selections. As per usual, if there are any books coming out that I missed that you think could potentially be featured, please be sure to leave that information down below. If any of the books I did discuss are featured, are you interested in any of them? Would you add any of them to your box? Or if you've made it to the end of this video and you are not feeling chatty, go ahead and leave me just a house emoji in honor of Rental House by Wakey Wing. And as always, if you like this video or if you just like me, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I typically post 2 videos a week, one on Wednesdays, one on Sundays, and I would love to connect with you in any of those future videos or on any of my other social media platforms, which you can always find linked down below along with any books featured in the video. Until next time, y'all, bye.